Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Rebecca, and if you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. We're talking about eggs today, and unless you have been living under a rock, you know that the price of eggs in this country has absolutely skyrocketed. Eggs were actually trending on Twitter last night under political figures, which I found a little bit weird. But I decided to go ahead and scroll through some of the tweets to see what people were saying. And most of them were just talking about how everybody can't believe how much eggs cost these days, and a lot of funny memes about eggs, and they make you laugh, but I think we're laughing so we don't cry. I think it's one of those situations where it just seems ridiculous and outrageous to all of us that eggs are costing so much money. So I wanted to talk to you guys about why, first of all, they're costing so much money, and then what you can do as a replacement if you can't find eggs in your area due to a shortage, or if you're just not willing to pay the high price of eggs these days. So first of all, the main reason that the egg prices have soared in this country is due to an ongoing bird flu epidemic, which is the deadliest in U.S. history to date. And according to CBS News, more than 58 million birds have been infected with the avian flu. And in order to put a stop to the outbreak, the birds that have been infected need to be euthanized. So in addition to that, the rising cost of feed and fuel and labor, in addition to the inflation that this country is already seeing, is the reason for the increase in cost and the shortages of eggs. I did my grocery shopping yesterday and was lucky enough to be able to find 2 dozen eggs that I needed, and they cost a pretty penny. I paid $5.19 a dozen for my eggs, but I know that they are costing more where other people are. I've seen as high as $9, which is crazy. I got mine from Aldi, and in my older age, I have developed an egg intolerance, which means that I can only eat a very specific kind of eggs or I get really sick. So luckily, I was able to find what I need, but I know that is not the case for everyone. So whether you can't find them or you're just not willing to pay the price, I've put together a few substitutions in case you need to replace eggs in whatever you are baking. So the first substitute I want to offer to you, which you may have heard of before, is applesauce. So 1/4 cup of applesauce is equal to 1 egg. Whenever possible, I would use unsweetened applesauce, but if you have sweetened, that's fine. You can still use it. You might just want to decrease the amount of sugar that's going into your recipe if you are worried about anything like that. This is a great substitution. I've used this before and it works great. If you're not an applesauce eater and you find yourself now with a jar of applesauce, I would recommend putting it into ice cube trays and then freezing it. One of these cubes is equal to 1 ounce. So if you wanted to cube them, put them in a bag, and take them out when you need them, you would use 4 to equal a 1/4 cup that you would replace in your bakes. If you don't have applesauce on hand, you could always just make your own if you do have apples, which I love making homemade applesauce, so that would be practical for me, but it may not be practical for all of you. So if you don't have applesauce or you don't want to make your own with the apples that you have, I would recommend using a banana. So half of a ripe banana is going to equal 1 egg in your bakes. I say ripe just because it's easier to mash and it's going to incorporate better into whatever you are baking. You want to be careful though, because this is going to pick up the flavor of banana in whatever you're baking. So if you're making something that's super sweet, like a cupcake, chocolate cupcake, I don't know if I'd want it to actually taste like banana too. So just be mindful of that when you are baking. Also, if you're baking something like banana bread, which I bake all the time, I wouldn't recommend using a banana for this. I would use a separate substitute as an added ingredient. Another great replacement for eggs are going to be nut butters. So if you have something like peanut butter, cashew butter, almond butter, these are going to be great things to add into your bakes as a substitute to eggs. So you're going to add about 3 tablespoons to equal 1 egg. Again, this is going to pick up the flavor of whatever you're baking. So I'm thinking, like, if you're making an apple bread, adding peanut butter to it or some sort of nut butter might not taste great, but if you are making like chocolate cupcakes, that might taste really good. So just be mindful of that. Again, if you are using this as a replacement, that it is going to pick up the flavor of the nut butter depending upon what you're making. Another thing you can use in replacement of eggs is yogurt. So I would recommend using a 1/4 cup of plain Greek yogurt into your bakes, which is going to keep it nice and moist. Another thing that I've seen is interchangeable with yogurt is actually buttermilk. Same thing, a 1/4 cup of buttermilk into your bakes is going to replace an egg and keep it nice and moist. If you don't have buttermilk, which I know I don't always keep buttermilk on hand, you can actually make your own, which is something that I've done before. I can't remember. I think I was making like a cinnamon bread one day. I just was like craving something sweet. And so I found this recipe. I had everything except for buttermilk. So I looked up replacements for that or things you can use in place of that, and you can actually make your own. All you have to do to make your own buttermilk is to add 1 tablespoon of vinegar to a 1 cup measure. Then you're going to fill the rest up with milk, mix it together, and let it sit for about 5 minutes. This is going to curdle the milk, not in a gross, disgusting way like you may be thinking, but it is going to actually give it like a buttermilk quality. It actually works. I've used it before. So if you don't have anything else, but you do have milk and vinegar, that is a great substitution. Another substitution you can use is actually baking soda and vinegar, which you may be thinking, I don't want my bake to taste like vinegar. But if you are using the baking soda and the vinegar option, the vinegar taste is going to bake out of whatever you are making, so you're not actually going to taste it. All you need to do is take 1 teaspoon of baking soda and add it to 1 tablespoon of vinegar, mix it together and add it to your bake, and that will replace 1 egg. This is especially good if you're making something that's sort of light, fluffy, and airy, and not something that is dense and moist. Another thing you can use is ground flaxseed. So this may not be a typical ingredient that people have at home. I know I used to have ground flaxseed around when I was making like these no-bake energy balls. I don't have them around now, but it is something that you can pick up most likely in the health department of your grocery store. If you don't have ground flaxseed and you just have regular flaxseed, you could use mortar and pestle to actually ground your own. If you're looking for it in your health food department, it's most likely going to be called like a flaxseed meal, and it's really simple to incorporate it into your bakes. All you have to do is mix a tablespoon of the ground flaxseed to 3 tablespoons of water. You're going to mix it up and let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes, and this will replace 1 egg in your recipe. The last recommendation I have for you guys today is Bob's Red Mill Egg Replacer. So this is also something that you're going to pick up probably in the health food department of your grocery store. This is great because you can actually replace a whole egg, an egg yolk, or an egg white depending upon what your recipe calls for. And depending upon what you're replacing, you're going to add the specified amount of water to it. This might get a little bit pricier, but it does contain the equivalent of 34 eggs in it, and there's only 4 simple ingredients in it, so you're not adding a bunch of junk into your bakes. Just might be a little bit more expensive of an option. But I also think it's kind of practical if you don't have all of those other separate ingredients in your home. I think this is something practical that people could use. So there's 8 egg replacements that you can use instead of eggs if you're not willing to cough up the price of eggs or you just can't find them in your area. I think they're all pretty practical. A lot of people probably have these things in their homes. I know I've tried the applesauce one before. I think I've tried the banana one before as well. And I've actually made my own buttermilk before using these ingredients. So I think they're practical things that everybody can use. They're simple to incorporate into your bakes if you're just not willing to pay the price of eggs these days. I actually put all of this up on my website already, which is the first time I've actually had something on my website before I've made a video about it, which feels really good. So you can go ahead and visit journeywithrebecca.com if you want any of this information. I did make up a cute little graphic that you can use as a reference if you want to keep any of these for future use. I really hope this will be helpful to you, and if you found value in this, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all very soon.